evening. How is everyone today? Oh, you guys are kind of sitting on a weird angle here. Alrighty then. I would like to welcome you to, hello Greg, you're back.
I am.
I would like to welcome you to Monday Night Workshop. How many people are here for the first time? Awesome, let's give them a hand. Gibbs down.
He hears applause, he thinks it's time to sign the book.
How many people are here for the last time? Gibbs.
You were doing so well.
So how many people here just graduated the last Omega 1?
2.
2. The last Omega 2. There we go. Congratulations. It was a wonderful experience. So this evening, I would like to take a moment first. Where's that clicker, dude? Here it is. This one?
Yep.
Okay. Where's the ray thingy? The like laser thing? Man, I really
The red button?
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be,
There it is. It's a little button.
don't look for it by pointing it in your face like you do.
Okay, so this evening I'm going to talk a little louder because our microphone system still isn't working. We've been having, I really think that somebody's up with our electronic system because we struggled with the audio, the Omega 2. We lost the computer. So we ended up having to bring a boombox in here and play the music, and then we started playing the 2001 from the other room. So it was strange to walk in here. You can hear 2001 hanging out in the lobby, but when you walk in here, it's dead silent. I'm like, is music still playing? I don't know. So we've been really having some very interesting issues happening. So hopefully we will have the computer switched out for the Omega 1, maybe not for the impact training?
Saturday I was planning on doing it.
Okay. Does that mean we'll be here earlier on Saturday?
Earlier or later, either one.
So our schedule is, we have an impact training this Saturday. It'll be delivered by me. And it will be on, I'm really just on a roll tonight. I'm just so agitated, so I'm trying to be funny. I had an altercation today, and I'm so upset that I got upset with one of the boxer dudes who yelled for parking in their spot. But he didn't yell at me, he yelled at my husband, and don't mess with my people. So I'm like, I was just telling Susan, it's funny, I don't remember the last time I got this close to someone's face, but I walked in there and just gave him the look like, I'm ready to rip your face off. And then I walked over to the manager and tried to politely be calm, but he just was like, and I'm like, okay, you need to be here, work out. But anyway, so I'm settling down from, I cannot remember the last time I had an altercation where I lost my temper, but I didn't really lose my temper, I just lost my cool, and that bothered me. So I have no responsibility today for being a representative of the Omega Vector. So our schedule is as follows. We have impact training this Saturday, 9 to noon. It'll be delivered on the Phenomenon of Man lecture series by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. George introduced this to us many years ago in a study group. I want to say it was the 93 or 94 study group where he introduced this concept to us. The Manly Father Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. There's a mouthful. Like Hermes Trismegistus. That gentleman, Teilhard, inspired George to what he called the Omega Point, the evolution of consciousness. And this is why George called Omega, Omega. He really liked the idea of the Omega Point. So I found it fitting to be our last impact training to go through that. I have a video, it's 72 minutes long, which is the slides and some guy talking, and you hear beep as the slide changes, which is so funny. But we'll have other stuff to do besides that and talk about it. I introduce it a little bit in Omega 4, so I might bring some of that information as well. And then, of course, we have the Omega 1 that starts on the 15th of May. This will be our last Omega 1 here for quite some time, or last Omega 1 for quite some time. Who knows where we might resurface. I've had a lot of people email and call me and text me, so I might as well just address it now. So George has closed the program down several times. Each time he's just had not the intention of revisiting, it's just let it go and see what unfolds. However, when he closed the program, he was doing study groups, so he still had some activity going on. So that's my desire, to still have an activity going on. It will not be under Omega, but there's things that I'm working on right now, and once I get them solidified, once I get things, I'm taking things one step at a time, so I'm working on the workshops, working on the impact, and once all of that's done, then we have to do the layout of liquidation, and what stays and what goes, and where are we gonna put it all, and blah, blah, blah. So I'll just keep you updating every Friday. I'll send out a newsletter and say, okay, here's the next steps, these are what we're taking. So that takes care of what we're gonna be doing. There won't be any more Monday night workshops. May will be the last one, so the last Monday night workshop will be May 19th, which happens to be my birthday and my anniversary. So I figure that's kind of nice. It's my last time presenting something at the building on my birthday and my anniversary, so I figure that's fitting. And then in June, what we'll do is we'll spend the whole month packing up and assigning things, and then we'll have a liquidation sale for 2 days. We're going to do it on a Friday and Saturday. Everything that we don't need, that's not a necessity, is going. So if you want to come and take a piece of the blue carpet, please feel free. It'll be $1 a square. We're going to still be open to taking donations because it's our intention to reopen, and we'd like to have some kind of funding behind us to do that. And then it would also assist us with the storage as well. So I'm just calling it a pragmatic pause. In September, the board will meet again, and at that time we'll determine whether or not we want to proceed forward or take a little bit longer break. It really, I'm just leaving it open. George practiced the idea of being unattached, and I would like to do the same thing. The donations have been really low, volunteers have been very scarce, and registration is low as well. I mean, this is more people I've had in the room in at least 6 months. So it's time, is what I feel like. It's time to go ahead and just revisit a pause, do the inhale and the exhale, and see what happens in that change. So again, the final programs for the month will be, obviously, tonight. We'll talk about responsibility. Saturday is the Phenomenon of Mance. The May 15th will be the Omega 1 through the 18th. So please come for graduation. That should be a nice graduation, our last one in the building. And then the 19th is the last Monday night workshop. The 28th is the impact training. I mean, the Back to Basics. Is there another Back to Basics in there? Next week. The next Monday is a Back to Basics with Nicole, and then the last Back to Basics will be on the 28th, which will be a Q&A. And I'm thinking I might show up for that one just to handle whatever, if you're okay with that. I might just show up for that one.
Can you repeat all that again?
Yes. You need me to talk louder? Sorry. So the following is our schedule. You're kidding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, tonight's topic is on responsibility. I thought it would be a nice thing to end with, so I'm doing responsibility, and then next Monday night workshop we're going to talk about conscious harmony. I'm going to start talking like a New Yorker now, because I'm all up in people's faces. So conscious harmony is the last one I want to discuss. But before I begin, I'd like to open up the floor. If anybody would like to just check in, tell us where you are, what's going on, how things are happening, this would be an appropriate time. Apparently you don't want to talk. Okay. Tonight's topic is responsibility. I've thought about the word responsibility for quite some time. I think even as a child, I used to not contemplate, but I considered the idea of being responsible and what are some of the things that I'm responsible for, as well as some of the things that I'm not responsible for. Early on as a child, I felt like it wasn't my responsibility if my sister got injured under my care. I'm a child. I mean, you don't think about taking care of people when you're a child. And of course, when you do babysitting and then your responsibility now, that comes into play. But personal responsibility, like the idea it's up to me to pass my classes when I'm in elementary school. It's up to me not to get into a fight. It's up to me to avoid any conflict in the home that we grew up in. I was responsible for taking care of my brother. Like, I wanted to protect him, and he protected me. One of my character traits, very strong, is protective. I'm a very protective individual, which is probably why I got up in that guy's face, because he went after my husband. Which, kind of funny, because I have a 6-foot husband, and I'm in a it should be the other way around. But anyway, protection is very big on me, and I think it's my sense of responsibility as well. I feel responsible for the people in my life. Don't go after them. I will protect you. Once you're in my circle, you're in, and I've got your back. And it's always been that way. So I feel like I may have confused the idea of responsibility with protection. But to me, that comes along the plane. I'm very protective of Omega. I was very protective over George. But I'm protective of Omega where sometimes I get upset when I know that, not upset, frustrated, when I know there are a mirage of people who've come through this program, taken our material and gone out with it, make money, and don't even give us a donation. Like, not even the least bit of donate, and that's an expectation. So I know I'm not supposed to have an expectation, but I am protective. That's my nature, I'm protective. So as I said, I think I've confused responsibility and protectiveness. So when I decided to do responsibility, with the close of Omega, well, what is my responsibility? What's my responsibility for the close of Omega? How am I responsible for that action coming to play? Big burden on my shoulders because I'm the one who looked into George's eyes and said, I got your back. Don't worry about it, it will be taken care of. And 2 years later now, I have to close the doors. Nobody else feels that burden. I'm sure they feel it, but I'm the one who looked in his eyes, and I'm the one who gave him my word. So that's a responsibility that I feel feigning. Like, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? What could I have done more to make sure that this survives? Look, those are all questions that have haunted me the last 3 days, or actually the last week, since we made our decision. I don't think I can be solely held accountable, but I do feel responsible for the way it's unfolding. I could have closed this a year ago, but I didn't want to because I had that commitment, and I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to force it. And that probably wasn't the right idea. I should have done it when I knew it was time. And maybe by this time we'd be opening back up again. So I feel like I'm responsible for that, for being selfish, for wanting to hold on. One more training, one more opportunity, one more person that we can make a contribution to. I feel that. I feel responsible for not being, and I don't want to say this to make you want to make me feel better. There's nothing you can say to make me feel better. So I feel responsible that I haven't been an effective leader. I feel responsible that I haven't delivered in-depth workshops like George did. I mean, he did phenomenal workshops, study groups. I feel responsible that I haven't been able to deliver a study group. I've been here for 25 years. You'd think I could write a study group, but I haven't. So I've been thinking of all those things and adding each one up. It then does fall on my shoulder about being responsible. When we think about responsibility, we think, what is my responsibility? What is my responsibility in anything that I do? Am I responsible for my family? Am I responsible for my community? Am I responsible for the government? I hope not. Am I responsible for Russia? Am I responsible for the planet Earth? There's so many questions and so many blurred lines. Oh my God, Robin Thicke is going to run through my head now. Does anybody know that song? No, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's a young song. You do? Kurt, you know that song? Have you seen the video?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, there's a lot of blurred lines on where responsibility lies. I have no intention of giving you clarity tonight, but I thought I'd walk you through some of the information that's available for our levels of responsibility. When I started, which clicky thing do I do, the right or the left?
The right.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't start this. So here's my sense of responsibility. Mark's been out of town for the last 3 days, so I, myself, created a PowerPoint presentation on my own. Mark has always done it. This is the first time. He actually came home to help me do this part, but everything else is mine. So this was my big, woo, look what I did. So when it comes for responsibility, I have responsibility to myself. What is my responsibility to me as a human being, but also my soul, my responsibility to the planet Earth, then of course to the children and my family members, the next generation. What's my responsibility for the next generation? And the older generation, the people who have already taken care of us and got us to where we are, am I not responsible for them? I didn't mean to look at you, Judy, when I said older Sorry, honey. But what is my responsibility? Louis, I didn't look at you, I looked at you. So my level of responsibility, where does it lie? Can one person be responsible for all of these? Well, in essence, yeah. Little bits of a time, there are, whoa, that was fast. Oh, the video shut up here. So, no single drop of water. Darn it, that didn't go out right. Can you see this?
Yes.
So there's a house being knocked down by the flood. And the quote is, no single drop of water thinks that it's responsible for the flood. I love
That's great.
that quote. I totally love that. And I could substitute the words, if I could use the same sentence structure, no single human being thinks that it's responsible for the destruction of humanity. We could say that and just substitute those words. There's a couple more that I did in here. Let me skip that one. So then, as I said, we ask ourselves, the question is, how can one person make a difference? So here's a drop of water. No single drop of water thinks it's responsible for the flood. Not one single piece of drop of water. So, sometimes we could feel so small when we look out there that we don't feel like our significance or contribution makes any difference. Not at all. But if we think about a picture, here's a picture. Now, back in the old days when they had paintings, I was actually going to use the Mona Lisa here, but it didn't work. So, paintings were done with brush strokes, but if you could go really, really deep, you could see that it's just a whole series of little dots is what it ends up being. But when we have pictures, they're called pixels. I'm sure everybody knows that. On a computer, we have pixels. So looking at the larger picture, we don't see a drop of water, well, per se. We don't see a pixel. We see the drop of water in the big picture. But as I continue to zoom in, what ends up happening is the larger picture gets distorted, and the more distorted it gets, the more I can see the little pixels. Where's my little thing? So I can see these little pixels right here. Each one of these little pixels creates that picture. I've got even larger. Each one, so I have a little pixel right here. Let's say this picture. So this pixel, even though it's just blue, it's in the field. If this pixel was pink, it would throw it off, wouldn't it? It would actually affect the other pixels around it. I like my little laser. So I have a little pixel here. These could be affected by the fact that this one went pink, and it would throw it off. Now, if I go to the larger picture, I would barely notice it. So that's where we get confused. Where's my responsibility? In the immediate, right here, right now, there's my responsibility. Larger picture, oh, I don't see it. And this is where we get lost. When we look and expand to the larger viewpoint, we think we're pointless. We think we're so small and insignificant we can't possibly make a contribution. This is where countries die, because people just shrug their shoulders and say, well, I can't do anything about it. This is where corporations die. Some people in the bottom of a corporation don't think that they have the voice that's strong enough to capture someone's attention, so a corporation can die. This is where families die sometimes, because people think, well, you know, I just don't know what to say, I don't want to upset them, whatever the reason is. But when we go to the big picture, sorry, Zach. When we go to the big picture, we lose our significance. So when I look at the grand scheme of things, it's really hard to imagine my contribution. But when I look in at the individual, it's hard not to imagine my contribution. Then my question is, where does my responsibility lie? Which is what I went to. So I've always assumed that the definition of responsibility was the ability to respond. Oh, isn't that good? I actually made that up. Because when I went to the dictionary, it wasn't even there. So here's Webster's definition. I went to Webster's. The first definition said the state of being the person called to do something. The state of a person who caused something to happen. Well, that's not the ability to respond. That's me causing something to happen. I'm responsible. Drive my car, hit on the brake, I'm responsible for stopping the car. So I'm responsible. Next definition, a duty or task that you are required or expected to do. It's my responsibility as a United States citizen to vote. That's a responsibility. Could I have sounded any more blander than that? Then I have something that you should do because it's morally right and legally required. Morally right, legally required. So it's my responsibility to be a good citizen. It's my responsibility not to get in someone's face and threaten them or what. So it's my responsibility to act like a human being. That would be my responsibility. So nowhere in here does it mention the ability to respond. I do not know where I came with that definition. I actually like that definition, but that's not what Webster calls responsibility. So I have my responsibility, and this is my definition. But this still seems very vague. There still isn't a, okay, so what? I can understand what responsibility is, but still, what does it mean what my responsibility is? There's a gentleman who wrote a book. His name is David Biscott. He wrote a book in the 70s. The book is actually called Risks. So he wrote this book on risks. And he said, here's things that you are responsible for. The first thing you are responsible for, what you say. I think that's true. I'm responsible, I forgot that earlier this afternoon. I am responsible for what I say. What I say is connected to my thought process, so I could even extend that to saying I'm responsible for what I think. So I'm responsible for my thoughts and what I say. The words that actually come out of my mouth, I'm responsible for. He says, I'm also responsible for what you are. I have a little struggle with this. I wanted to change it to who you are, but I wanted to be honoring him. So I'm responsible for what you are. I'm responsible for a short Italian New Yorker that just got in someone's face. So yes, I would be responsible for that. I'm responsible for being a stepmom. I'm responsible for being an executive business coach. So all of those I'm responsible, what I am. The next one, I'm responsible for what you feel. I'm responsible for my emotions, my reactions as well as actions. I'm responsible for every arrest record that takes over my body, my mind, and my emotions. I'm responsible for every upset, every compassion, every joy, every anger. I'm responsible for. And finally, he said, you're responsible for what you do. Now this one, I think we all understand that. I'm responsible. Except when something goes wrong. Oh, I didn't do it. That's the first thing we say, not me. So we have that not me thing going on because we don't want to adhere to the cost. The same gentleman actually had a great quote. He said, you cannot commit to risk unless you're willing to accept responsibility for a loss. I think that's a beautiful one. So I cannot commit to a risk unless I'm willing to take the responsibility in case it's a loss. Remember, it's called a risk. It doesn't guarantee that it's gonna happen. It's called a risk. Remember the first time I went skydiving? How many pages were there, Nicole? Like 21? All these pages you had to fill out and fill out and fill out, page after page after page. I'm not responsible if the chute doesn't open. I won't sue the company. My family won't sue the company. I mean, it was like page after page. I'm like, what the? I stopped reading. They just show me where to sign because I got nervous. What do you mean the chute's not going to open? What do you mean there's a possibility that the plane could crash? I mean, anything. But they really covered their butt is really what it was coming down to. And I knew when I got up in that plane, I may not make it down. So actually, the first time I went skydiving, I almost fell out of the plane before it was time to go. I went and I did, there's 3 different kinds of skydiving. You could do a tandem where you're attached to a person. You could do one where you're attached to the plane, so you fall about 200 feet and then the cord pulls it open. Or you could do one where you go out free fall. So a free fall, you're much higher. I did the free fall. I figure if I'm going to die, I want to experience like as long as I can before I die. So I got the free fall, and it required like at least 3 more hours of instruction. So I took my, did I go? No, the first time I was by myself, I think. I went by myself. And when I got up to go out, my backpack, the parachute, I got into the plane, so I have a pilot. So when you free fall, they don't let you just free fall on your first jump. You have to have 2 jump masters. So there's one on either side of me. And the way you practice is you walk out on the wing, one guy goes out, then you walk out, and the third guy comes out, and then you go 1, 2, 3, and let go. So I'm sitting I get into the pilot, and I'm sitting underneath the instrument panel because I'm talking to the pilot, because at this time I was also taking pilot lessons. So I was talking to him about the difference between a Cessna and a Seahawk,
Piper.
and just the differences of airplanes, and taking the instrument panel, and there's only one seat in the plane because all the other seats are taken out so people can pile in, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm talking to him, and the guy taps me on the shoulder and says, okay, it's time to go. And I went to sit up, but my chute was stuck underneath the instrument thing. So I went like this to roll to get it out, and I did not know they opened the door already, and I went out the plane. And so I'm hanging out, and the guy grabbed my legs, and I see the bottom of the plane, and he reaches and pulls me back, and he goes, not yet. He almost got punched too. So I was terrified. terrified. Up until this point, I was fine. But when I saw the bottom of the plane and I thought I'm heading out of the plane without anybody, that's when the fear hit me. I couldn't go out. He went out. I just breathed. I wouldn't look down. I went 1, 2, 3, and I let go, closed my eyes, stomach went up to my throat, almost threw up. It was nauseating. It was the worst experience. So I made myself go a second time. But the thing is, it didn't occur to me that I was responsible for not paying attention for the door being open. When I went the second time, you think I watched that door? Oh, yeah. I made sure when I got the door, and then I looked out to make sure I wasn't going to be afraid. And the second time was truly beautiful. I really enjoyed that one. So responsible for what you do, what you feel in that one little instance. For what I said, well, I didn't really say what I thought, but I was responsible for how I didn't feel nice about those gentlemen. And then responsible for not paying attention, the upset and the fear. So the question is, am I responsible for fear? Is it possible that I'm responsible for my fear? Have a conversation with someone about that, just quickly. May I have your attention, please? So what do you say, just by a show of hands, do you think you're responsible for your fear?
Yes.
That's almost everybody. All right. Excellent. That's not right or wrong. I just wanted to check. I'm taking a survey. Survey is? What's that show from?
Survey says.
Family Feud. That's it. Survey says. So this gentleman, David Viscott, also had some things that we're not responsible for. He said, you're not responsible for making anyone else happy. Mark? Sorry. Did I look at my husband on that one? So we're not responsible for making anyone else happy. Well, that sounds very logical, doesn't it? How many people in here have tried to make other people happy? Yeah. So you're not responsible for it. Tamara didn't raise her hand. But most of us, that's what we do. We want to make the people that our friends, our family, our loved ones, our bosses, we want to make them happy. Oh yeah, we're above and beyond. We're there. He also says we're not responsible for becoming what someone else wants us to be. Now this is a good one. It's a little tricky. As children, we don't know our parents are trying to turn us into little miniature them. So we follow along because we think that's what we're supposed to be. And then comes the day, as a teenager, where we go, I don't have to follow them, do I? That's very scary for a parent. First of all, you lose control over the kid. But then, now they're branching out. And this is where a lot of teenagers branch out, they experiment, this is where drugs comes into play, the sex and everything, because they're looking to find out who they are, who they want to be. Some people get married at a very early age and they never have an opportunity to experience spreading out. As a matter of fact, I have someone I know in my life, she got pregnant at 16 years old, had her second one when she was 18, her third one when she was 23. So 23 years old, 3 children. Never had a teenage, never had a childhood. It was boom, 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 boom. Well, I shouldn't say do you. In her later 20s, early 30s, she went nuts. Party animal, it's time to go, freak, just because she missed it in her teenage years. So she missed that point. I get an idea that perhaps maybe we need that transition to break free to come home and find out what we really want to be. So, and this is not uncommon. I know several people that have gotten married at an early age, had kids at an early age, and they want to be with their husband or their wife once, and they have an identity crisis in their 30s or 40s. What's life? What am I supposed to be? So, being what I'm not going to ask any of you if you tried to be what somebody else wanted you to be, so that's not a big deal. So here we have it. The next person I want to talk to you about is George Adair, obviously our beloved founder. He posed this question. Oh, there he is. He posed this question. He said, what is my responsibility to myself? So let's start with me. What is my responsibility to me? Have a conversation with your buddy and figure that question out. May I have your attention, please? So I'd like to hear from some of you, what are your thoughts? What are your responsibility to yourself? What's your responsibility to yourself? Yes?
To be myself.
To be yourself. What does that mean?
That means to be who I am, not to let others influence me.
So my question would be, who are you?
I'm Liz.
Okay. what it means to be Liz?
I'm trying to.
Okay, all right.
I try to be me. I mean, I the best of my knowledge and being myself. And if I can't be myself, being others, then I'm not being truthful to myself, or I'm not going by my core values and also my I won't be able to serve others if I'm not myself.
Okay, so to be yourself, excellent. Someone else? Yes, here.
This one I'm coming up with basically from the news you were sharing. And I think it's easier for me to find responsibilities that I've screwed up on rather than the ones that I've succeeded. So I'm gonna use Omega as one. I let down the ball a couple times on getting press stuff together, and historical stuff. I let down a ball on the year George was gonna go back to his hometown. And I worked it out where I was still gonna be able to go back and I was gonna film it beforehand in my mind. My early years in Omega, when I would get 90% of the way to a film production and then lose it. And one of the big reasons I wanted the film productions was I saw myself as going to be one of the main financial funders, for Omega. Feeling responsibility even for the fact that we're gonna take a break.
How many breaks were you with George? Because you were around for the 2000, but were you around for the 93?
I've been around for 26, 27 years.
So you should have been under 2 at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 I'm thinking of.
Probably 3.
I think there was a kind of sort of one where.
Okay.
There was an
Did, yeah. Did you feel responsible when he closed it?
Not on the first one, and I know why, because I was definitely at that time taking more than I was giving back.
Right.
And I still do that, unfortunately, but I mean, at that time, very, very much so. The second one I did, and that's because he sucker punched me. He brought me in and told me about it before it had been announced. And that was the time he brought in several people to tell me now that was about it. But that time I didn't. That time I felt like I let him down.
Mhm.
That was poor. And I remember you came up and said how, you said something along the lines of how especially he brought me in there. And I said we should
Can't take that back.
yeah, I was just like, oh, and the third one I felt it, but I was more at peace with it.
Okay, excellent. So.
And I'm probably less at peace with this one because I'm feeling like I let down the ball more on this one.
Okay. Cinda?
I feel, a very common issue challenge with me is trying to find harmony and acceptance of certain barriers that I have. And reaching a point of harmony rather than constant resistance so that I can't choke.
Okay. So, the responsibility to yourself is
I'm responsible for my well-being.
your well-being. Okay, got it. Nicole?
What flashed into my mind was this list that George had written about responsibility, and the one that came to my mind was the ability to respond to the voice of my own soul. And that was the picture that I saw with responsibility to myself, it would be to be true to my soul.
Uh-huh. To follow the voice of your soul.
Yeah, follow myself.
Got it. Dean?
I think my responsibility is to take care of myself. At the same time, I'm taking care of others, not in a sense of like rescuing them, but in the sense of being available to contribute what I'm able to be a part of a positive world.
Okay, excellent. Tamara?
To continue progressing forward with as much strength and integrity as I can possibly muster.
Okay, excellent. I was gonna say willpower too, but, so would you say you're responsible for your own will or sense of will? I tie that with strength and integrity.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yes, Lewis?
Well, a lot of times when I feel that, you could either be motivated by guilt or by fear or by just knowing what the responsibility is and developing the habits and just the habits of doing what is mainly right, within the culture and the tradition of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a fine line in between there, it's, you have to be intuitive within your own feelings, and like she was saying, to feel good, for your own well-being in what you're doing, and if that's going to make you happy, go for it.
Okay. So, thank you all. When I came to this question, I really struggled with it. What is my responsibility to myself? My first response was, my responsibility is to be a light bearer. Well, that's not to me, that's to humanity. And then my next one was make a contribution to humanity. Again, that's not to me, so all of that is like purpose. So then I thought, well, maybe my responsibility is to fulfill my purpose. Well, that's a little bit closer, but my purpose is still tied out there. I remember when I was taking care of George, it was an undaunting task towards the end. And Mike Evans was the only one who seemed to settle him down. He was the only one that George would recognize, which would just berserk me, because I'm there taking care of you. How do you not know who I am? And I understand Alzheimer's and whatnot. But I remember there was times where I would be so overwhelmed. I had no sleep, barely eating, and trying to get this guy around, and then sometimes a little frail 80-year-old man would have the strength of a 30-year-old man trying to throw me down the stairs. And I remember having a conversation with someone, and they said, Anne-Marie, if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot possibly continue to take care of George. And I know I had heard that, but I wasn't willing to say, oh, I've got to take me time, because that's selfish time. So I really struggled with leaving just to take a break and then coming back. I was very grateful to Mike, because I knew when I would call him, it didn't matter if I called him 11 o'clock at night, Mike, get over here now. He'd show up, take George for a ride. I'd have maybe 20 minutes to an hour just to relax, and I didn't freak out because I knew Mike was fine. George was in good hands. So then I thought, well, is my responsibility to control everything? Maybe that's just a behavior that I have. So the question I end up being is, what is my responsibility to myself? And I think, to go along the lines with what Nicole has, I think my responsibility is to be the best human being that I can be. At this moment, the best human being that I can be. It doesn't matter that an hour ago I was irate. Right now, at this moment, it is my responsibility to be the best human being that I can be. Tomorrow, my responsibility is to be the best human being that I can be. So, for me, that's what seems to make sense. I feel like that works out. But George's answer was, to live each moment as if you and the universe are one. Say what? Me and the universe are one. Alrighty. Where's that picture of the out period? So how do I be the universe, and how does the universe be me? What? So this is a very philosophical answer. But knowing George as I did, I knew he didn't want to give you the answer. You'd have to seek your own answer. So to live each moment as if you and the universe are one, that means what I do affects the universe, and what the universe does affects me. Well, I can wrap my head about that on the planet Earth. A couple of years ago, Fukushima, nuclear disaster. That nuclear waste went into the atmosphere. We all breathe from the same atmosphere. So, therefore, the planet affects me as I affect the planet. All right, I can understand that. Do I understand that Saturn affects me? Well, if I did astrology, maybe, but I don't see the actual comprehension of that. But it makes sense. If what happens here affects the universe, then the universe must be affecting me, if the equation is correct. It makes me think about, we tell this story in Omega 2, how a couple of, I actually went to research this and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I wonder if this story is just a fabrication. But it's a good one, so I'm going to tell it. So there's a bunch of scientists wanted to find the idea about positioning, and they wanted to get the cue ball to land in the same spot on a billiard table. So they had the mechanical arm, barometric pressure, temperature, everything was adjusted and in control by the scientists, but no matter what they did, the cue ball would not land in the same spot. They took all their information, fed it into a computer. 3 days later, the computer said the reason why the ball would not land in the same spot was people in the room were moving about. Scientists went, say what? So, where was I? I said, say what? That's what the scientist said. So the scientist, everybody stayed in position. Nobody moved. They did the mechanical arm, the ball, did the mechanical arm again. What happened? Same spot, over and over and over again. Okay, I can understand that. So, to live each moment as if you and the universe are one. That means every time I have an action, a thought, a word that is of elevation, I'm making a contribution to the universe. Every time I have an action, a thought, or a word that is of disintegration, I am helping with the disintegration of the universe. So what would my contribution be then, or my responsibility? To make sure that I am taking care of the universe the way that I would like to be taken care of. So I can understand this now, but when I first read it, that was quite intriguing to me. The next thing on responsibility, so there's George. The next thing on responsibility I want to introduce you to is the Ageless Wisdom to, oh no, I'm sorry, one other thing. So I understand responsibility. Can I pray for responsibility? Can I meditate? I know there are certain things I could do, but can I engage my spirit? Oh, Great Spirit, bestow upon me responsibility and make me a strong, responsible leader. Can I do that? So that sounds like a goofy question. Oh no, you can't do that. Well, you can. So Albert Emily is the author of a book called The Magic Prayer. The Aleph Beit is considered to be a very magical alphabet. It's often called a magic prayer. Actually, that's the name of his title. Sadiq, and I don't know if I'm saying this right. Anybody Jewish in here? Okay, good. Sadiq, that's the way we were taught. This is the symbol for Sadiq. Now, I have a very special connection to this symbol. Another story. Do I have time? No, I won't tell you a story. So I have a very special connection to this symbol. Sadiq, according to Albert Emily and a lot of people who write about the Kabbalah, Levi is an authority on the Kabbalah, they talk about that each letter, this picture right here is called a Rubik. So this illustration is called a Rubik. And if you can meditate on that Rubik, you're praying for whatever that represents. So it's like a symbol. It's essentially what we're doing. So we're praying for something. In the Hebrew alphabet, every Rubik represents a different prayer. So there's 22 different prayers. Sadiq is one of the prayers. The first thing that it says is expressing a longing to help others to know the justice, purity, and beauty of God's love. So my first prayer is to know the justice, beauty of God's love. The next one, it will aid those who desire to teach and guide others. The next one says, if you use Sadiq sincerely and persistently, be ready to accept a great responsibility. So this is where you're preparing to accept responsibility. That means you're becoming responsible. So this prayer right here is for responsibility, but caution. You are asking that divine guidance find expression through you. That is your responsibility. It means no longer your will, thy will. That's how this connects in here. So it's a greater purpose than just your little minuscule life. That little dot in the picture, you're looking to be of service to the greater picture. But it is possible to pray for responsibility. Now, the techniques that they talk about in prayer for the Aleph Beit, essentially you would sit, meditate on this symbol, and they say speaking it is the most beneficial. So you would speak it 7 times, not sadik, 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 not as fast as you can, just a sadiq, see the rubic, hold on to it, think about what the intention of it is. It's like a prayer, and then you would do the same thing. So it's not a structured prayer like Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. It's not that. It's just a different type of prayer. But what you're doing is calling upon your soul. Something greater than you actually is what we're calling upon. So you can pray for responsibility. Then, of course, the next person I want to introduce you to is Alice Bailey. Nicole mentioned this earlier. Alice Bailey was an Ageless Wisdom teacher. Very profound. If you look through, actually, in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, there's 3 women that were made a tremendous impact. It was Alice Bailey, Helen Blavatsky, and oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. And that's not her name, but there's another person there. I can't remember her name. But there's 3 people who made a contribution to the Ageless Wisdom teachings. Alice Bailey has tons of books. I have volumes of her information. Very in-depth, very difficult to read, but very profound. It takes time to digest her information. George handed out, in the study group, he handed this out. In our facilitator training, we had to memorize this. So we had to repeat this and memorize it. This was titled Responsibility. Alice Bailey has this list. George put this together. There's 10 steps of responsibility. The first one, which Nicole's already said, always follow the voice of your own soul. Always follow the voice of your own soul. That's what the first one says. Do not be distracted by the lesser voices of your loved ones, nor by those who are in your life by karmic obligation. Now I know when people read this, they go, what do you mean the lesser voices of your loved ones? And they get all upset. That's not what it means. It means that your voice is your voice. Not that it's greater or less than anyone else's, but your voice belongs to you. If you follow someone else's voice, it's a lesser voice because it's not yours. That's what it means. So this is going to be a good conversation tonight when we go home. My voice is more important than yours. No, my voice is more important than yours. So do not be distracted by the lesser voices of your loved ones, nor by those who are in your life by karmic obligation. True servers belong to the world and not to a handful of people. So this actually was designed for service, Alice Bailey, which often talked about service. So we belong to the world and not to a handful of people. This is hard for individuals who are attached to you being a certain way. Oh, how come you don't do anything with us? How come you're always in those trainings? How come you're... Well, you belong to the world, not to a select handful of people. Avoid the desire to unduly cherish those who are in your everyday life. Relinquish the close attention they require, for their aim is to distract you from the path of service. Now, they're not sitting there thinking, how can I distract you? They're clueless. If you understand first force, second force, the people who are in your life are second force. They're designed to distract you, to make you stronger. So they're designed to do that. Now, unfortunately, what we do is, oh, it's okay, I'll come back to it. Oh, you know, suppose you have to clean the house for the weekend, and then your mom shows up. Oops, guess I'm not cleaning, I'm going to take care of my mom. And then, let's say you have a report due at work, but then the boss comes in and says, I need you to do this, this, and this, and okay, and so you distract from the things that you're wanting to do, the things that you would like to do in your life. You are not here to follow the voice of your friends and loved ones, those who think they know better than you. For do not allow them to deflect you from your path of service. Oh, you know, I'm really worried about you. I think, Susan, can I say this? Her family gave her an intervention in Omega.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cult. You can't go to that place. So sometimes our friends and family think they know what's better for us and they want to intervene. I think that's funny. There was an intervention for Omega. Sorry, I just used you.
That's
Thank
all
you.
right. It was years ago.
The next one is begin to do your own work. Leave others to shoulder their own responsibility. This is where we struggle. I love you, I want to help you. Oh, here, and we rescue people. And we don't allow them to have their own experiences. We do our own work, leave others to shoulder their own responsibility. They'll never learn about responsibility if you keep doing it for them. Again, as a parent, this is a hard thing to do. When do you draw the line on when you want them to get fall, or when kids are first learning how to walk? Our first response, we run because we want to catch them. That's dangerous. You have to let them fall. It helps build their muscles. You have to let, they're going to bounce, they'll be fine. It's okay. Just no corners is good. So you have to let them fall. So where do I leave? Then this is again a fine line. What's my responsibility? Where do I determine whether or not I'm letting them go on their own? So what's that parable? You could teach a man, you could feed a man for a day, but teach him how to fish and feed him for his life. That would be responsibility. So does it mean that I leave everyone on all the time? No. Give instruction once or twice, but not every single time. That would be appropriate. The next one, you have no responsibility for anyone, including your children, once they reach the age of responsibility. You are responsible for them until they reach the age of responsibility. You've earned the right to your own soul's freedom and expression. Now, how do you determine whether or not your child is ready for responsibility? I know several people, 40 years old, they're still living at home with mommy, taking care of them. That's a parent's fault, not the child's. We have to recognize that. Sorry, I wasn't talking about your son. So, how do we know that when it's time for our children to have their own responsibility? When they start making decisions on their own. Once they start making decisions on their own, and they're logical and they make sense, you're hands off. That's it. And the big decisions in life for the kids, this is high school, graduating high school. What are you going to do after school? Their first job. You help them get their first job, but once they got their first job, that's it. Hands off. Help them with their first resume, maybe the second one. That's it. Hands off. They know how to do it now. So we can instruct them until they're ready to go, and then that's it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be available for them if they need to come back home and reset. That's totally fine. But there should be a limit on that, too, a negotiation, an agreement. Otherwise, you're now taking on the responsibility of another individual, and you're not having the right to your own soul's freedom and expression. Your child, who you love, becomes a burden at that point. The next one, waste no time on any phase of the work which does not require your attention. This one was one of my favorite ones when we first learned. I remember one time I was scurrying around up at the other building, scurrying around, doing the gift shop and then doing cleaning and helping with staff, and George said to me, Anne-Marie, if you do everything, there's nothing for anyone else to do. And I kind of went, what? It really caught me for a loop. And he said, if you're doing everything, there's nothing left for anyone else to do. And of course, my natural thing was, but it's not going to get done. And he said, well, it will. People just don't know it needs to be done because you're doing everything. You have to back off. And then I thought, okay, waste no time on any phase of the work which does not require your attention. At that time, what was I doing? Facilitating. So I stopped everything else and focused on facilitating. Recently, some of you may know this, I was in the parking lot, I was in the parking lot. I was in the parking lot on the last Omega 1 helping doing the parking. I'd never done parking registration before, so I figured that'd be a nice thing to do. And it was actually quite refreshing because I wasn't thinking, oh gosh, what's this person, how do I keep them, how do I get their attention, how do I perform, how do I get my voice? None of that it was all gone. It was, oh look, there's a person. I'm unattached to whether you're not staying. Hey, have a nice training, see ya. It was really nice. I actually enjoyed it. Is it part of the work? Well, at that time, yeah, it was. Is it beneath me? No. Do I still come here and clean? Absolutely. But when I clean, I'm focused on cleaning. I'm not facilitating. When I'm out parking, I'm focused on parking. I'm not cleaning. So whatever's in my mindset, that's what I am sticking with. I have a really hard time with people who interrupt me. I need you for a second. I'm doing something. Did I say I have a really hard time with this? So when people interrupt me while I'm on a task, it throws me off. Because I'm on a task. And when you interrupt me, I can't complete what I'm wanting to do. So I have a hard time. I have a hard time when I'm asked questions of certain things and I don't know and I don't care. How many people are training? I don't know and I don't care. Why don't you know? Shouldn't you know? I don't care. I'm being unattached. Not I don't care, but I want to be focused on the training, not how many people are attending. Who's staffing? I don't know. It's not my job to know that. So I have a hard time when people present questions to me that I really am not attached to, but they are. So how do I answer them George gave a great illustration. He used to say, you never have to answer any question that was posed of you. Try doing that with your boss. So you have to be careful on that one. But he would say sometimes people would ask questions because it deflects you and you're taken off track. So I want to just focus on the things that I'm focusing on. This weekend was a great example. Newsletter went out, announced Omega is going to take a break. I intentionally did not answer my phone, unless for a few people, but I did not answer my phone. I didn't respond to texts. I didn't respond to emails because I didn't want to deal with it at that moment. We just made the announcement. I wanted to reset. I needed to take a moment to work on tonight, the impact training. There's things that I have to do to get us ready to do this. I don't want to be fielding questions about what's going on. I knew tonight would be a good opportunity if I had to, so I did. I refused to answer the phone, refused to answer emails. Like I said, I only talked to 2 or 3 people this weekend, and that was it. I was done. But I know how I am. I'm going to be focused on that, and that's it. So this is why this is one of my favorite ones, because I really understand the idea of being focused and how distracted or destructive it can be sometimes when you are interrupted. George had a great story where he talked about energy and vibration. He went to a family gathering, and he was late, believe it or not. Evelyn, his wife. So I just have to say Evelyn, you'll understand that. So they show up late, and he walks in, and he's feeling nervous and awkward because he's late, because George was never late. He was 20 minutes early everywhere, so being late really was wrong for him. He walks in, and there's a bunch of people playing musical instruments in the living room. Hey, how you doing? And he says they all have to stop playing. Hi, George, how you doing? Well, I actually called him Junior, that was his name. Hey, Junior, how's it going? And everyone stopped, and then he kind of felt awkward, and there was that pause, like, well, do we start playing? Do we talk? And then, so he moved into the kitchen. In the kitchen, the women were all bustling about, getting the meal prepared. And he said, hey guys, how you doing? And everyone, hey George, hugs around. Everyone has to stop what they're doing to hug everyone. And then he went outside in the back where they're pitching horseshoes. And he goes, hey guys, how you doing? And then everyone stops the game to come over and say hi to Evelyn and George. And when he was outside, that's when he got it. By his presence, he disrupted 3 things that were already in progress. 3 things that were already in progress, he interrupted them. And he thought to himself, I don't want to do that again. That really he realized, was it terribly destructive? No. But did it disturb the energy? Absolutely. And he thought he'd rather be someone who slid into energy rather than break a flow, because he broke the flow. And as a teacher, as he was, he understood the implications and the effect you have when you break energy. So that's why this one's my favorite one, about not disturbing your energy for what your attention is on. Number 9, the next one is, no one achieves anything by avoiding responsibility. So there's that word again. Nobody achieves anything by avoiding responsibility. Desire to achieve flickers in every soul that is in the process of awakening. Fan those flames into a steady fire and undertake the task before you. So as facilitators, that's our job, to fan the flames in other people, to take on responsibility of their lives. That's Omega, personal responsibility. We are dedicated for your personal responsibility. And of course, last but not least, follow the voice of your soul, for you belong to the world and not to a handful of people. That's kind of just a summation. So this is a good illustration of what responsibility is as a true server. What would I do in the form of service? Another Ageless Wisdom teacher is Torquem Saradarian. For those of you who haven't seen him, that's what he looks like. Lived up in Sedona, Arizona, has passed away. He said, this was intriguing. So his book, he has this book called The Sense of Responsibility. Obviously, you can see I've read this. My spine has been broken and there are pages falling out of this. So I read this book quite often. I've looked through it often as well. So the 22 signs, this one cracked me up. There's 22 signs of someone who's lacking responsibility? Well, if I can't figure out if I have responsibility, maybe I should look at this list, and if I fit that list, then I don't have responsibility. So, oops, what did I do? See, I have no responsibility. I'm not responsible for that. Do I just, here, I hit the top button by accident, I'm sorry. So my responsibility, I can't. I need to have I am responsible for hitting the wrong button, even though I so deeply want to blame Mark for not telling me not to touch.
So now is he responsible for fixing it?
He is responsible.
It was Gibbs' question.
Thank you. 22 signs of lacking responsibility. Lying. First thing, if you're somebody who lies, you lack responsibility. Stealing. You steal, you lack responsibility. Hides. That means you're not telling the truth, you hide within, you withdraw. Destroys. You go out of your way to destroy things. Slanders. You slander other individuals. Damaging to your health. This is where destructive comes into play. You know, I'm going to pick on you people, sorry. The smokers, you know it's bad for you and you keep smoking. That's damaging your health. I'm not going to say any more about that. Hurts, exploits. Hey, what's wrong with my thing? All right. Hurts, exploits, and manipulates other people. If you're somebody who manipulates people, you do not have responsibility. Carelessness on the job or in friendship. So if you're careless with your friendships, and if you're careless on the job, whatever. Lacking responsibility, insulting others. Somebody who lacks responsibility. Lacks solemnity, which is one of the virtues, which is the awakening of the soul, essentially, access to your soul. Imposes one's will on others. So if I impose my will on you, I lack responsibility. If I'm arrogant, I'm really not liking this list. If I'm full of vanity, indifferent to the feelings of others, worship my own ego, gossip, jealousy, I don't have that. Encourages vice in others, in other words, I want other people to be upset. Enjoys seeing people fail. I actually have met people like this, that's amazing. Uses others' time and money. Well, actually, let me back up. Enjoys seeing other people fail. I'm going to have to say I fall into that. I watched the Super Bowl. I had a very strong agenda on which team won. So I was happy that the other team failed. So yeah, uses other people's time and money. Becomes a burden upon the shoulders of others, and is disrespectful. No, that was it. And is disrespectful. Ooh, disrespectful. That's a pretty good list of things to decide whether or not we're not responsible. Now, when I go through this list, what I am aware of is I don't have all 22, but I have a couple of them in there. So that means I'm not responsible in all areas of my life. Arrogant? No, of course not. Full of vanity, indifferent to the feelings of others. I don't feel that. Worships my own ego, gossip, no. But seeing people fail, like I said, sometimes in sports I can get to that. Becoming a burden to others. Sometimes I feel like I may be a burden to others. I don't think I'm disrespectful. I had more stuff on the first list than I did this one. I should have pointed that out. So that captured my attention. Okay, some of the 22 I have, so maybe I'm not as responsible as I think I am. Now, Torkham then says, here's the responsibilities of a disciple, excuse me. The responsibilities of a disciple. This is going along the lines of what Alice Bailey talked about with her responsibility. He says there's 12 responsibilities for a disciple. He called it a disciple of the work, the Ancients Wisdom teachings. So if you wish to be a disciple of the work, now this just isn't in your everyday life. This is if you want to be a disciple of the Ancients Wisdom teachings, if you want to implement the work into your everyday life, these are some of the things that are required. So this is an abbreviated list. He said, be healthy. In other words, avoid all things that can cause failure in your health and in your heart, meaning emotions. So be healthy. Healthy relationships, healthy eating, healthy work environment, healthy work environment, healthy environment in your home. Be healthy. Strive to be healthy. The next one, develop inclusive love and compassion. Inclusiveness, love and compassion. Inclusiveness means everyone is included. You don't pick and choose. You don't love just the ones you feel good about. You love your enemies equally as well. As a matter of fact, there should be no enemies. The people that you have judgments on, you should find love and compassion for your family. Just same as, although it might be your family members too. But you should find love and compassion for everybody, no matter who stands in front of you. You cannot be a disciple if there is hatred or separatism within you. This is what Torkham says. If you're experiencing ugliness with your thoughts, emotions, and behavior, you cannot be a disciple. The next one, develop the mind through education, creativity, and service. If your mind is crooked and uneducated, you cannot understand life. That's from Torkham. You cannot see the need. You cannot discriminate, which his discrimination is finding value of things. You cannot digest and formulate ideas and visions. So you must constantly work on developing your education, creativity, and service. This is why George did the study groups, to help us with our education, continuing education. Stand up for unity. So again, the same thing, not separatism, but unity. So standing up for unity. Not aggressively, just stand up for unity. When you speak, stand up for unity. Emphasizing beauty. When you emphasize beauty, you see beauty everywhere. In seeing beauty, you evoke beauty. In seeing ugliness, you evoke ugliness. Therefore, you would increase the ugliness. So seeing beauty increases beauty. Spreading goodwill. A disciple must have the will to good for everyone and everything. So being of goodwill to everyone and everything. That's where the Buddhists would take this on, not killing anything, and insects or anything. So goodwill to everyone. Plants as well. I mean, anything that you have within you or within your scope. There we go. Build bridges. Bridges with the inner guide and the higher sources to continuously come in contact with higher levels where great centers of learning exist. So building bridges, this would be like meditating, contemplating, taking time to digest and understand the things that you're going through. Create a field of service for the upliftment of the human race. A real disciple cannot rest until he creates fields of service, because a person is equal to the extent of the field of service he creates. So creating a field of service is a disciple. Be an example. Be an example of patience, tolerance, striving, and sacrifice. So being an example, again, is of patience, tolerance, striving, and sacrifice. Spread the knowledge. To spread the knowledge of higher beings, the existence of great ones, and the existence of the hierarchy. So spread the ageless wisdom teachings. Spread the things that you have learned. Spread the knowledge of immortality. Not you're never going to die. Your physical body will die, but your soul is endless. It is infinity. It is immortal. So spread that knowledge. Spread the teachings of our soul. How can we make contributions to our souls rather than just to our physical being? And of course, emphasize beingness. People must manifest their inner reality beyond their outward appearance, words, dress, makeup, etc., which is what I just correlated to. So these are the responsibilities of a disciple. So if you decide that a disciple is the path that you would like to take, then you now have a sense of responsibility. What is required of you? Torcum also said, now that, let's say you want to develop responsibility. Yes, this is something I want to have in my life. What are some of the things that I could do to develop responsibility? Through meditation. These are some of the things that I can do, here we are, is to go through meditation. This, again, is just an abbreviated, so I'm going to explain a little bit more. By trying to come in contact with the inner guide and later with your true self. So through meditation, this is one way that I can develop responsibility. Even if it's just saying, I'm going to meditate today and following through, that's integrity. That helps you begin to develop responsibility. Voluntarily taking on tasks. Voluntarily taking on tasks. So when the boss says to you, hey, I've got this project, you go, I'll do it. So you take on the task. Even if it puts a little pressure on you, you take on a task to shoulder the responsibility and carrying it through without begrudging it. Oh, I couldn't have done that, I shouldn't have done that. Or you take it on, you're 100% committed. That's it. There's no other thought about it. The next one, no blaming. You cannot be a responsible person if blaming is part of your vocabulary. If blaming is part of your thinking, you cannot be a responsible individual. There is no such thing as blame. Responsibility, personal responsibility. Responsible for the good things as well as the bad things, the successes as well as the failures. You are responsible. End of story. Making commitments and promises, this is integrity. Making commitments and promises, is integrity. Have integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. That would be responsibility. Developing pure love for a lofty cause, a person, or a group. Now this one's intriguing. To develop pure love, unconditional love, accept the unacceptable, love the unlovable, give to the undeserving, and forgive the unforgivable. So there's my unconditional love for a lofty cause. What does a lofty cause mean? Are we out there in the ethers? No. I think a lofty cause means something greater than myself. That would be a lofty cause. So something greater than myself, Now we have to be careful here. To develop pure love for a person, does that mean now I'm responsible for that individual? Well, I am. Because when I'm in a relationship, it takes two to tango, so I'm responsible for their actions and they're responsible for mine. If Mark has to go to a board meeting and I show up wearing flip-flops and a sundress, that's a reflection on him. So there are times when my actions reflect on him and there's times when his actions reflect on me. So yeah, I'm responsible for him as well as he's responsible for me. We talk about this in Omega 2. When you're in a buddy situation in Omega 2, you're responsible for your buddy's actions, your buddy's responsible for yours. When you live in a house, there's 7 people who live in the house and the electric bill doesn't get paid, everybody goes without electricity. So yes, we are responsible for one another. Contemplating upon the one self. This is what George talked about, the universe, and you are one. So contemplating on the one self, that helps me develop a sense of responsibility. Here's one, honest and nobility. Now we all understand what honesty is, but this word nobility is a lost word. It's a word that not many people use anymore. In the business environment that I'm in, every time I bring up this word, they kind of cringe, because they think about England and Prince Harry and Prince whatever they are, and the baby and whatnot. They think of hierarchy, and that's not what nobility is. Nobility is something far greater than that. Nobility involves chivalry, it involves integrity, it involves sacrifice, it involves service. I think nobility is a lost art, which is a book I'm writing. So, here. I think nobility is a lost art. I think it's something that our country's missing, society's missing. Back in the medieval days, the darkest era of humanity, that is when nobility existed, and that makes sense. Because if you understand polarity, as dark as you are, you have to have something great light to balance that out. So in the darkest time of humanity, this is when we were the strongest with nobility. And I think this might be coming back because it looks like it's getting pretty dark around here lately. Nobody laughed at that one. Okay. When it comes to, let me go back to that. Here's the way that we could develop responsibility. So you might say, are you kidding me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things and I'll have responsibility? No, I'm not kidding you. Do you think these 7 things are easy to do? No. This is a very difficult task to take on. Some people say, I don't want to be responsible. I like somebody else taking over. I like someone else being in charge. I can tell you, when I first became the director of Omega, there were times where I'd be kicking and screaming, what are you asking me for? Go ask somebody else. There isn't anybody else, it's me. So having to be the one to make the decisions all the time, that's difficult. You want to take a break every once in a while. So, but you can't. As a true server, there are no breaks. So through meditation, voluntarily taking on tasks, no blaming, integrity, developing pure love for a lofty cause, person, or group, contemplating upon the one self, honesty, and nobility. Now, I know I've just thrown a whole bunch of information at you guys. I see sleepy eyes and people nodding going, oh my gosh. So I'm going to take a break here for a second. I'm going to leave this slide up here. I want to have you a conversation with your buddy and talk about these 7 things. Do you think they're things you're capable of doing? So go ahead, please. Or if you're still doing them right now. Go ahead. May I have your attention, please? I'm just going to interrupt for a moment. I know I have these 7 lists up here, the 7 things that we can do, but there is one other thing that I wanted to mention. I don't have a slide for it. It's actually in Torkum's book. I told you the 22 things that you could do to recognize a person who doesn't have a sense of responsibility. But here are some things that you can think about. By not having a sense of responsibility, these are the results of it. So if you're an individual who does not have a sense of responsibility, eventually no one will trust you. That's flat out an easy one. If you have no responsibility, no one will trust you. So think about people in your life. If you don't trust them, they probably don't have a sense of responsibility. Greater works and duties will not be given to you. You will be overlooked all the time. You'll be overlooked. Doesn't matter if you've been at your job for 20 years. If you have no responsibility, you will be overlooked. You will not be invited to join the circle of those who work for the highest good for humanity. So even in a service-oriented job, you won't be taken to join the higher circle, meaning the ones who are creating, who are teaching, who are implementing the work. You will never bloom. You will delay your evolution and invite unnecessary pain and suffering. You'll repeat the same thing over and over. You'll be a good picture of insanity. running into the wall over and over and over, creating pain and suffering not just in your life, but in the lives of the people around you. I have numerous examples of parents who have no sense of responsibility and how it affects their children. Their children are often left waiting and wanting and hoping dad's going to be there today, not there, or waiting to be picked up from school, waiting to be. So when there's no sense of responsibility, it falls on the kids. And then what happens with the kids? They either get angry and they themselves don't have responsibility, or they don't trust you and they have a greater sense of responsibility because you didn't have any with them. Higher mysteries, knowledge, and leadership will not be given to you, so you'll never be a leader if you don't have responsibility. Now this is kind of a tricky one, because there are some people who end up being vice presidents because they're the boss's son, and they're totally not qualified. So don't just think about a title, it means the responsibilities as well. I know some people who have the title, but they don't do any of the things that they're supposed to be doing. There's a whole mirage of other individuals who do it. And number 6, real success is based upon the sense of responsibility. Real success is based upon the sense of responsibility. No business can flourish without responsible leaders and coworkers. No business can succeed without the responsible leaders and coworkers. I think that's important. I could even substitute the word to family members. Nobody will be successful in a family if you're not a successful patriarch of the family and if your children are not responsible as well. So when it comes to responsibility, I was thinking about how responsibility actually, it's responsible to be responsible. Like, did you understand that one? I was kind of, so it feels like a weight to be responsible. So it shouldn't be taken lightly. Personal responsibility is a two-edged sword. It's a two-edged sword. You could feel great triumph in your victories and you could bleed in your failures. But when you're responsible, you're responsible. That's it, end of story. There are people who complain about their lot in life because they're unaware that they're the ones who put themselves there. Everything you have in your life is responsible, you are responsible for. So you're the ones who put yourself there. Some people are unconscious that they're responsible for the situations that they're in, the bad relationships, the inability to hold a job, the wrong crowd of friends that they're in, etc. The list is endless. Until we turn the finger around and point it at ourselves, we will never have evolution, we'll never have responsibility, and we will never change. So the last one I wanted to end up with was, I want to go back to this gentleman, David Biscott. He says, here's what, if you don't like your lifestyle, you are responsible for it. If it's going to change, it has to change with you. If you don't like your job, you're responsible for it. If you don't like your home, you're responsible for it. If you do not like your husband or wife, you're responsible for it. If you don't like the way you are treated, you are responsible for it. Now, let's just take a brief moment here and look at this. If you don't like your lifestyle, you're responsible for it. Okay, I have to change my lifestyle. That makes easy sense to me. If you don't like your job, you're responsible for it. But what if you need the money? What if you've been there for 20 years, you got tenure, and you don't want to give it up? That you've already put the long haul. So I'm responsible for not liking it. I could flip it around and find the value. This is where metanoia comes into play. It doesn't mean I have to diss the job. I can just turn the way I see the job. Unless it's an unhealthy situation, then diss the job. So if you don't like your job, you're responsible for the way you are reacting to your job. Same thing here. If you don't like your home, you're responsible. Is it easy just to pitch up another home? No. Sometimes we buy the houses and we're stuck with them. So it's my responsibility to do the best, or to flip it around and find value. Be grateful that you have a home. Be grateful that you have a roof over your head. Now, I struggle in Mark's house. I always call it Mark's house because I don't feel like it's mine. It was his house, what him and his ex-wife had. There was a lot of yelling. I could feel it. I'm sensitive. I feel it in the house. No matter what I've done, I've brought my stuff in. I do the saging and the chanting, holy. It still doesn't feel right to me. Do I feel guilty about that? Yes, I know. I love him and he wants me to be happy there. I'm not comfortable in that house. I've tried and tried and tried. So these last 3 days that he was gone, I didn't sleep. Can't sleep there. Well, I'm sleeping on the couch. I'm sleeping in the family room. I even went outside one time to see if I could sleep out there. So I'm responsible for that. Yes, I'm responsible for it. I haven't found a solution yet. It cost me about another $350,000 and I'll find one. Sorry. If you don't like your husband and wife, do you just dish them? No. You can change and find the value. Of course, if they're abusive and violent, yes, find another relationship. But if it's just that you have disagreements with them, or you're not seeing on the same level, well, it's your responsibility to adjust it. Your responsibility to adjust it. You don't sit there and go, well, how come you had to come to my side? It's your responsibility. If you recognize it, it's your responsibility. We talked about the Enneagram a couple of months ago for study groups. We talked about our numbers and the way we interact with individuals. It's my responsibility. Once I recognize what behavior you are, I'm the one who adapts. You don't adapt to me. That is a place of service, and that's responsibility. Responsibility and service are tied in together. So when I first talked to you about responsibility, I told you that I thought responsibility had to do with me controlling things, protecting. I had that connected. Well, that's wrong. Responsibility is connected to service. See, my protection isn't exactly service. If I really wanted to be in service, I wouldn't have the attachment. So responsibility and service are the two, they go hand in hand. When you are a responsible individual, you understand about service. You understand about sacrifice. There is no task that is too great for you. You don't sit and go, oh gosh, I wish I didn't have to do this. You find joy in having a task, in having a sense of responsibility. As a matter of fact, you find joy in an opportunity to, if you don't like the way you're treated, you're responsible. Like right now, this is perfect. I told you about my upset. I should have been responsible for my reaction to that gentleman, not let him upset me. Doesn't matter. He's an individual, he's upset. Bless you, have a nice day, and mean it. Not, so what's my responsibility? Again, that goes back to the question that George asked us. My responsibility to myself, well, to be the best human being that I can be. These are things that everything in my life I am responsible for. You know the axiom, by the way, the definition of an axiom is, Mike, do you remember it?
Natural law.
It's a law that has no facts to prove it. Right. So the definition of an axiom is a law that has no facts to prove it. So the axiom is whatever you put out there, you will get back. So whatever I put out is going to come back to me. Therefore, I'm responsible. Now, when I finished this paper, I thought, wow, that means I'm responsible for every word I speak, every thought I have, every emotion I have. I would be scared to leave the house, which today is a good example. So I'm responsible. That is a very heavy sense. I mean, that's a huge burden. How many of us actually live our lives thinking about responsibility and what I'm responsible for? The actions that I take, the words that I speak, and the thoughts that I have. If I could remember that everything I do, say, or think, I am responsible for, my life would be tremendously different. The world would be different. Our interactions would be different if I could remember that. So this ties us back to consciousness. My arrest records takes me out, and I think probably my arrest records are one reason why I don't have responsibility, because I'm reacting to something instead of remembering. So arrest records take us out of the present moment. If I can remember to stay in the present moment, conscious, that's where I find responsibility. I think that's what I ended up as my summation to myself, was that in order for me to be responsible, I have to be present. That means I have to follow through on the things I said I was going to do. George used to say, it's funny how you have one voice that commits to something and another voice that refuses to do it. Which voice do you listen to? It depends if we're tired. If we're tired, we follow the voice that doesn't want to do it. If we have integrity, we follow through. It's kind of like that Indian axiom where it's, you have two dogs, the white dog and the black dog, and they're fighting which one wins, the one you tell it to. So it's the same thing. George used to use that illustration, you know, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and work out. That's one strong voice. The next morning, oh, you're kidding me, I'm tired, and snooze. That voice won. So be careful when you commit to something, which voice is committing? Is it the voice of responsibility? Is it the voice of pleasing? Is it the voice seeking approval? Is it a voice of not knowing? Are you not even aware what you're committing to? Or, as I said, is it the voice of responsibility? So thank you for letting me take you through this drama of responsibility. I hope I have given some insight to some of you. You actually have a 3-page handout this week, tonight, because it took me 3 pages to get all of this in there. Any questions, comments, or concerns before I leave? Okay, good. Okay. Yes, sir.
This I should have presented earlier. The publisher gave me 10 books to use as I wanted because we got picked up nationwide in Barnes and Noble.
Mhm.
So I brought those 10 books in here. They've already been signed by Gibbs, so they're $11 and the money just goes straight to
Thank
Omega.
you.
So they just got dropped off tonight.
Excellent, thank you. All right, anyone else on, yes, sir?
You know, you're making me feel a little guilty because I feel like I'm lazy and not doing the research. And it's so much easier to sit here and just take a few notes and let you do all the
Well,
hard
that's okay.
work. You know.
Well, maybe I inspire you now, so you'll go home and research.
Well, I've
Guilty.
researched all of that. But
Okay.
it's good to be reminded of everything.
Thank you,
Bring
Louis.
it back because my memory is not what it used to be.
Thank you, sir. Doyle?
I was gonna say about your home, I was gonna be like, yeah, smart about it, and say, well, just trade homes with me.
No, thank you. I already live in Egypt.
Number two, I read an article one time about a guy that would-be actor, who was scared to death every time he got up in front of the camera. So the guy told him to take the camera, take it completely apart, and reassemble it, and tell me what's in there that you're afraid of. He wasn't afraid of it anymore, he loved it, but it's what in now.
Right.
So,
That's a good story. Thank you, Doyle. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much. We will see you in 2 weeks for the last Monday night workshop. Good night.